Welcome to the lecture on procedural language, structured query language. So first we will discuss about procedural language. So what is procedural language? It is a generic term used for traditional programming language. In this traditional programming language, which specifies the sequence of set of commands, and every procedural language which contains the set of elements. So in these elements, normally the programming which contains two components, one is logic and another one is syntax. So in this, logic means programming logic which explains the way which the problem is solved on the structure of the program, and syntax, it refers the commands of features in the programming language. For example, if you are declaring in a variable or computations or any other standard functions or the debug or input output operations and either the loop or arrays, anything. So these components is must for programming procedural languages. And next we will discuss about PL/SQL. So in this PL/SQL, which was developed by Oracle Corporations in the 1980s. It is a procedural language for extension for SQL and Oracle relational databases, and significant member of Oracle programming tool sets which is extensively used to that code, the particular PL/SQL codes. And this SQL codes is used for code server-side programming languages. And this PL/SQL is a case insensitive programming language. And this PL/SQL is used when we require some procedural features like conditional statement or iteration loop statements or either the looping statement for processing. We are using for this PL/SQL language. And this we can retrieve the data from the tables using select statement and apply it into some other variables. For example, if you want to accessing any other variable with the help of this, how can you implement that variable? With the help of the select statement. And if you are using a PL/SQL for writing a code in the form of SQL, we cannot use the DDL statement, that is data definition language statements like create a table or view anything. So only we are using from the select statement. And the structure of PL/SQL, so three sections we are discussed in the structure of PL/SQL. One is declaration section and body section and exception section. So here declaration section is the variable declaration. What the variable is declared in that we are using from that table, and program statements. So here the body section which consists of either any kind of set of commands will be implemented for this programming statements, and exception handling so through any exception is handling from that begin statement, it will exception handler it required for this exceptions section. And first one is declare variable. So how to declare a variable in a declare section? The basic syntax is variable name and variable type. So here we are requiring the variable to store, for example, student mark. So student mark is my variable name. In this case, we declare a variable name is called as student mark as a numeric variable. So here the numeric variable is a data type. So that is variable type. In this example, student mark and the variable type is number. How to initializing a variable in a declaration variable? When you are declare a variable, you can initialize it with the default values like for example, student mark equal to 0, or initialize any other value to that variable is called as initializing variable. So in this case, the data type, for example, the percentage symbol, here this example variable name, table name, dot column name and percentage type. So here the percentage which declare which is defined for if suppose the particular variable in what kind of data type in a table. So actual database, if you have any variable in that particular data type is defined in this percentage type. How to retrieve that data type in a database means here the student name is my variable name and the actual database name is table student dot name percentage type. For example, this is a simple example for snippet PL/SQL programming language. The first one is declare section. In this declare section, we have used for two variable. One is student mark 1, number is a data type, and the table name is table student dot mark 1 percentage type. So here the mark 1 percentage type is the actual database having some numeric variable or some data type is reside in that table. So actually it retrieve from that data type in a PL/SQL query. So here the student mark 2 is my variable, second variable, and number is my data type, and table names table student dot mark 2 percentage type. And another initialization variable is student total mark number equal to 0. That is the student total mark initially 0. And this section begin, that is body section. Here we have compare with this 2 mark that the name of the student name is Akshit. Comparing these mark, that is adding these 2 marks, and we will get the total marks. Here select mark 1 into student mark 1. So actual data type having a data attribute name is mark 1 into student mark 1 is my is name of this data type. Select mark 1 into student mark 1 from the table name is table student where name equal to Akshit. And second mark will get we retrieve from this table is select mark 2 into student mark 2 is my alias name of mark 2 from the table name is table student where name equal to Akshit. And student total mark will get will adding these 2 mark, that is student mark 1 and mark 2, and the resultant will be stored in this variable is student total mark, and print this value as print student total mark. And this is for my simple PL/SQL snippet coding. How to execute on this coding part is in your Oracle server SQL, just type that dollar symbol, sorry @ symbol with the file name as your actual file name. Just execute on that particular PL/SQL coding program. Let me discuss about the PL/SQL control structures. So in this control structures, it just allows to you to branch or create a loops and function calls in the way you have been used in with the help of the C and C++ or Java. So here the if statement and looping statements. So if statement means it can allow for simple statement and multiple if statement anything, and loop statement is that is iteration constructors loop, while and for loop. So first one is the decision control structures, that is if statement is if in case the one way branch means we also say the commands are conditioned. If then else structure is execute in the if the condition is true means it executed the statement, if it is false means it exit, that is if then condition only it executes the single part alone, that is the command that execute if the condition is true alone, and if the condition evaluates is to null means it consider automatically it is a false. And two-way decision making statement if then else, that is if the code of the execution is if the condition is true or false. So if condition, the basic syntax is if condition then commands that execute if the condition is true, else commands that execute if the condition is false, and end if. It can be nested, be sure for the ended nested statements. And the next one is multi-way branches. If then else, the many condition it be accessed for this particular thing. If condition 1 then if the condition is true means the particular commands is executed, else if condition 2 commands that execute in the if the condition is true, and again if the condition is true means the third condition is condition 3 is executed. So on if else the command is that is else command that execute if the none of this is executed, and if the condition is that is condition or true, and end if. And this is a simple example for conditional statements. Here we will get the two, that is declaring a variables, two variable, that is mark 1 and mark 2, and here we will get the mark 1 into, that is select mark 1 into the student mark 1 from the table is where name equal to Akshit, and again mark 2. So just compare the whether this 2 marks is above 40 marks, 40 or not. That is if mark 1 is greater than or equal to 40, and if the mark 2 is greater than or equal to 40, then pass. That is if the condition is both the condition is true means it will execute the condition is pass. If any one of the condition is false means it is execute on this else part, that is try again. And next one is looping structure. So here the looping structure that executes a series of program statements periodically evaluates exit conditions to determine whether the loop is a repeat or not, that is or repeat or exit. The two types of looping structure, one is pre-test loop and post-test loop. Pre-test loop means evaluate the condition, evaluate the exist condition before any program commands it could be executed. And post-test loop means it executes one or more program statements or commands before the loop executes in the exist conditions for the first time. So here the PL/SQL has considered for 4 looping structures. One is loop exit and another one is loop exit when, while loop and for loop. First one is loop exit condition. So this is a simple example of simple syntax for this loop exit structure. Loop program statements, a list of executable program statements inside this loop structure. If condition, then exit, end if. So here the additional program statements is included for that after if end if statements and end loop. Next one is loop exit when loop. So here loop program statements and exit when the condition is true, it execute on the program statements. After that end loop is executed. And while loop. So while condition loop, program statement and end while. So this is a simple example program for to print the first 10 numbers. So here how to declaring a variable. My variable is I and the data type is number. While I is not equal to 10, loop print I equal to this. First print the value of I is 1 and I is incremented by 1. If the condition is true up until it reaches the value is 10, it print the value of 1 to 10. And numeric loop for loop variable. Here the simple syntax for this for loop for counter variable in start value and end value. So here that is a counter variable in starting value to ending value, loop, program statements and end for loop. And next one is exception, that is error handling in this third section in PL/SQL. When you execute the PL/SQL, a lot of changes get an error. For example, if you are to execute on any program in a PL/SQL, if suppose any error is occur, that error is passed through on with the help of the exception handling. So exception handler is actually take care of the part of the different kind of exception handling, either the built-in function or user-defined functions. So as a good PL/SQL developer, we have to handle those errors to avoid the termination of the PL/SQL program. So this technique is called as exception handling. If suppose any error is occurred during the executable of the program, if any cases it occur means automatically exception handling is throws from that particular what is the actual error is passed on through the program. It is to avoiding the termination, that is terminating the PL/SQL programs. And how to handling the runtime errors in the PL/SQL programs. Runtime errors causes the exceptions. Here the exception handler exists to deal with the different kind of errors in the different kind of situations. For example, here the simple syntax of this exception handling is exception when the first exception name, then exception handler commands, and when except you can pass through on the within the exception, the multiple exception is thrown from the single exception handlings, and when others, then other handler commands. So here the exception handling having a two kind of exception handling, either the predefined exceptions or that is predefined exceptions or built-in exceptions and user-defined exceptions. So here predefined exception means that is a built-in exceptions inbuilt in a PL/SQL program. That is the different kinds of exception name is duplicate value on index, that is commands violates if you have a primary key unique constraint. No data on found. If suppose in the particular data there is no record means automatically it throws the no data found, that is the query retrieves no records. And too many rows. If suppose a query returns more rows than anticipated. And zero divide. If suppose in your division part, if suppose 0 divided by some other value means automatically it throws the zero divide error. And invalid number, that is in the conversion of either incorrect invalid number means it automatically pass on the exception as invalid number. And value error, that is error in truncation, arithmetic or data conversion operations. This is an example for inbuilt function or otherwise predefined functions. So in this example, we'll declare a variable, two variable mark 1 and mark 2, and total marks is initialized to 0, and we'll get the student average number equal to 0. And here just the here select mark 1 into student mark 1 from the table name where name is Akshit. So in this name of the particular variable getting the two values or two marks is mark 1 and mark 2, adding these two marks into total marks and this total mark divided by 100. So and just print the student average, that is average student. In case if suppose the total marks divided by 100, 0 divided by any other value means automatically it's in the exception for when 0 divide, then it prints the exception trying to divide by 0. That is, it's pass on the error exception to the programmer is trying to divide by 0 error. So in this example, exception handler by that is the common exception, inbuilt exception is divide by 0. So these are predefined exception or built-in exceptions. So many built-in exceptions are available inbuilt in Oracle and SQL Server and Teradata, etc. In some cases, we may require our own exceptions. We can pass it on here, our own exceptions to handle the sum of special conditions. So in this, some own exception is passed on to that particular exception is called as custom exception or user defined exceptions. So using this user defined exceptions, you can pass on the less common errors and do not having a predefined name in this particular exception. And the basic syntax is exception name, exception, pragma, exception init, and what is the actual name of the exception and error code. So you can specify your own exception name, that is called as custom exception or error exception. And user defined exception is not real for Oracle error. So this is simple structure of this user defined exception. Declare statement begin, and within this begin, if suppose here the raise exception name is a how to pass or how to handling the exception to the user defined exception with the help of the raise command. Raise the exception and handling the exceptions. The simple example for user defined exception is here only will take for the student mark 1 as a number, mark type, and upper limit exception. Here the upper limit exception is my user defined exception. So in this exception, student mark 1 is either 100 or 0. So if the any one condition is true, it raise the upper limit. If suppose it if suppose it raise the upper limit means automatically it throw the exception is invalid mark. Suppose it exceed the other than this 100 means mark should be in between only for 0 to 100. If suppose I am trying to enter a value for 140 or 100 above 100 means automatically raise the exception is it is mark should be only between the 0 to 100. That is invalid mark. So this is your custom exception or user defined exception. So with the help of the raise upper limit means here the upper limit is my user defined exception. We have to indicate the PLSQL compiler when has to be raised. That is we reach the value of other than or exit the 100 means automatically it exit the that condition is invalid mark, or otherwise it should be in a 0 to 100. Next we will discuss about data on forms. So in this data on forms, when we need to enter the data into database or display the data from the database, we require the form to create a predefined or user defined controls. So how to predefined and user defined controls is created with the form means either these controls are different types of data. For example, rows and columns are structured data displayed in a grid controls. So with the help of the grid controls, in this rows and columns is inbuilt is there in a rows and columns. Okay. So here the grid controls, the rows and columns are structured in a data, this control itself it displayed it. How many rows and columns is required for the particular controls. And gender type means data it should be displayed in a drop down list or otherwise radio button. So the user can choose any one of the value at a time. So that is each and every button or each and every control is designed in the data. For example, if you have either the text box means in that particular text box either the number of text is minimum length or otherwise maximum. If you want to maximum length of the data is typed in your particular text box means we can use for the rich text box. So here it is not necessary to maintain the student total marks in a database tables. So we must calculate the mark 1, mark 2, mark 3. So no need to put the variable for the or otherwise no need to calculate the each and every mark 1, mark 2, mark 3 is a control of the data. With the help instead of this mark 1, mark 2, mark 3 directly you can calculate this mark 1 plus mark 2 and adding these marks into the variable store it in a total marks. So to make a program easy to understand, when we are, that is this is called as total mark is called as naming conversion to name variables and controls. So here the naming conversions to provide guidelines how to name each object in the database, and this other programs in the identifiers the purpose used of the objects. Another thing is the data text box controls, which displays a student name could be named as a text student name, a text that is text student name. And next one is control properties. So in this control properties, the use of code on the form, it is ability to set the property on the control on the form. So for example, if you want to define or if you want to declare any some controls or otherwise some controls put it in your form, means each and every form control having a own properties. So in this aim is, the main aim is to be help with the user deal with the form, alerting for the properties as well as in response to the events. So the controls and forms have a many properties of the setting of using codes. For example, text box means in that particular text box the actual name of the text box and then the font size, everything reside in the properties of the text. So the controls and forms having a own properties and own behavior of this methods. The controls and forms having a different methods is called. The methods and functions which shall be called to perform the predefined operations. So each and every forms having a own properties and own methods. The common methods is called as set focus, undo and requery. So for example, if you are choosing for this set focus method, means in this set focus method specifies the forms and controls for setting a cursor point for the particular form, for the particular controls. And requery method is useful for the functions which gives a focus for form or control to get the updated data. Our next one is, we'll discuss about using program how to retrieving and saving a data in a forms. There are common situation in SQL as used within a programming languages. Either you can updation of data or insertion of data or deletion of data. In case the updation of data means the database is updated by collecting all information and changing the value in the particular table. So for example, SQL it provide the update command which is used to update the value from the focus, that is from the forms to database tables. For example, if you want to if you want to update the particular record in the table, means you can use for this update command. And next one is insertion data. So here the insertion of data, we require new record to be stored in the database. We have to use with the help of the statement is insert statement. So if you want to add new row, means with the help of the insert statement we can adding a new row to the particular database in a table. And deletion of data means delete command, which this delete command deletes the record from the database tables. So with the help of the delete command, only for deleting a particular record or other particular record in the table, not for the entire table. Based on the var class condition, it will be delete one or more record from the table. So if you want to delete from a particular record, means you can use it in a var class. And we have different types of data access controls in a VB. Here we will discuss, that is data access object DAO and remote data object and activist data object. We will discuss about this DAO and ADO controls. Using data access control, DAO and ADO, the first one we will discuss about DAO control. Data access object control is a special control which is mainly used for the bridges between the connectivity between the application and database. For example, the front end application is my VB and my back end application is my Oracle or either the SQL server. How we can communicate with this SQL, that is application, front end application and back end application, with the help of the data access object. And this, to bridge the connection, we must pass the set of arguments as a connection string to build in a method is called as connection or connection string. DAO is particularly good for the MS Access and MS SQL Server databases, that is the backend applications. Here DAO connection, here the front end application is my using from this VB program, and backend application either the MS Access database or Oracle. So in this, the VB program, that is here the VB form DAO control with the help of the MS that engine to connect the MS Access database. So if you want to connect with the ODBC connection through the Oracle server. The basic terminology of DAO control is, that is record set. So record set means it represents the data in a table or otherwise result of the SQL select statement. And you can use the record set to view or update or delete the data in a base tables. Using old DAO control, here the DAO control we have used for 2 text box and one ID and DAO, that is data access controls, and here the data aware OLE containers, that is object link embedded container. And this DAO control having, you can use move from first, last, next, previous with the, here the button is called as move first, last. So data aware control is directly the OLEB, the images is placed in your form itself. And making the DAO application from the VB6, it defined the form, that is just declaring a, or otherwise designing a form is, just drag the 2 text boxes, that is first name and last name, and what is ID. Here the boxes OLEDB controls and DAO control. So these are the control names for text first name, text last name, text ID and label ID and OLE photo and date label, DAT label employee. And that is employee table. In this table, if suppose the properties of this employee table, you can change the name of the properties, and database name is MDB, and employee record sources where you get from the record sources is employees, and caption is here employee. That is, you can change the properties of the DAO controls. And data aware controls, change the text boxes and OLE box into the text 1, text 2, text 3 and OLE, the particular name and where it is data source is implemented and data fields. And next one is, we will discuss about the new ADO control, that is Activist Data Object Controls. In VB6 it recommends both using the ADO controllers instead of DAO and RDO control, that is Remote Data Access Object and Data Access Object. And this Activist Data Objects works well for local database, desktop database software and remote. So it can, that is ADO access, Activist Data Object, it both its support from the local desktop DBMS software as well as the remote database softwares. This is a ADO control and OLEDB database. The main purpose of this OLEDB, that is object link embedded object, is, so for example, if the front end application having a different application, for example MS Excel, we want to if we want to retrieve the MS SQL or otherwise spreadsheet into your VB program with the help of the OLEDB controls. So here the different type of applications reside in this, the bottom up, that is SQL, RDBMS, file system or ISM database and spreadsheet and email system, and the last one is directory services. So in this application directly link with this OLEDB, and then OLEDB for connect with this cursor engine and distributed query engine and SQL preprocessor. In this, if you want to retrieve from that particular application from your VB, means that is your data consumes from the front end application is Visual Basic 6.0 and C++ database front end application. So directly you can retrieve from that XM your spreadsheet program into your VB form with the help of the OLEDB. We have discussed in the 2 example program in ADO controls. One is ADO control with the jet engine and another one is ODBC connections. So first one is using ADO control to show the records in MS Access in the particular database name is biblo.mdb database. So with the help of the native, the connection name is jet engine connection. So just design a form in a ID, name, year on born and the data ADO control tool. Here object and properties are setting along with this ADODC, the name and ADO author, and caption is authors, and first text box is text ID, author ID, ADO author and author ID, and second one is text name, ADO author and second one, and third one is the third text box is text year born and add ADO author and year on born. So connection string, how to set the connection string in a jet engine. The connection string setup and the design and runtime. It is VB how to get the database from this a jet engine, that is two options is required. One is jet engine OLDB and in the Microsoft Access, or otherwise ODBC. ODBC is a generic one. Here adjust the property of the page of ADO author. So here the set the command type is here 2D command table, that is ADO table, and click on that connection string is here this part. So here a connection string, that is click on the connection string, that is data source name, where you get from that data source name, and click on build. Here Microsoft, choose the Microsoft Jet 3.51 OLEDB provider and click next. The next one is choose the database name from the select the database backend for bibliolib.mdb and then click on OK and text connection. Once the text connection is over means you just click on that record source, where you get from that record source from the table, choose author name and apply OK. So finally you get save all other files and execute on that application as ID, name and year on born and authors. And second example is using ADO control ODBC connection. Here Open Database Connectivity is a software protocol which is used to for allow the client applications. In this making ODBC application, VB is a convenient practice for because it's the steps involved in the all types of compliant databases system. First VB program and ADO along with the ODBC connection, and databases is you can connect with the different types of databases, MS Access, SQL Server, Oracle, Sysbase and IBM DB2. And ODBC data source, where you get from that that is which is ODBC resource for specifies the location, driver type, other parameters. So you will get from that ODBC administrator from the control panel, ODBC 32-bit manager, ODBC manager, and add on click add button, choose Microsoft ODBC for Oracle. In that just link, first one is name of the source, where you get from that data source and add command, and third one is select the database name as bibliolib.mdb, and fourth one is locate the file where you locate on that particular MDB file and click on that OK. So this is an example for ODBC connection with this VB and VB applications. And next we will discuss about distributing applications with the MS Access. There are two main choices in the how to distribute the applications. One is either you can you can create a MDB file or MDE file. That is here MDB file means if the user need to all tables and forms and reports code, give all them for full database is created. So entire database is created with the help of the file name is MDB file. So if you want to protect particular database file means that file name is called as MDE file. That is make database encrypt file. Make database file is you can create your own database and the help of the any reports and forms and coding entirely combined with the MDB file, or otherwise if you want to protect from that particular file means that is called as MDE file. If suppose MDE file is essentially means encrypts the database application so that no one can examine or change the layout. So only you can view the particular database, you cannot change anything in your MDE file. What are the steps to create an application from this distributing applications in a MS Access? The first one is make the application in a standalone, and second one is runs completely from your forms. Never needs to use for the MS Access menu for either the tables or queries or forms and reports. Automatically starts when the database opened. So tools, you can choose the tools and database utilities and startup. Auto exe macros is called, application format, and standard MDB file is created and encrypt your MDE file, and runtime package is implemented, and security, and once your installation of package is over means automatically distributing application with the MS Access. And next one is we will discuss about the table operations. It's a handover from this your database table. So automatically, for example, storing and retrieving a data from the each and every table in a database is known as table operations. So in this particular table operation, whatever data is stored or retrieving in a different way, that is the different categories, it's implementing the table, that is storing a data and retrieving a data. The first one is, if you are retrieving a data and storing a data and reorganizing a data in a database, means every application must be these operations are performed. One is retrieve data. So here the retrieve data means three types of data is retrieved. One is read entire table, or read next row, or sequential reader, or otherwise read randomized, or otherwise arbitrary row. So how to retrieving a data in a database in the table operation? Either in a read each and every rows, or otherwise read the entire table of the record, or otherwise the random access method. So read entire table means, here if suppose the reading an entire table or large portion, it occurs relatively for printing reports. So you can use from this printing reports. So for example, print weekly pay checks means the application have to read every rows in a employee table. So that is, if you want to retrieve the weekly records, means in that weekly records you can retrieve all the records in the table. And read next row, or otherwise sequential order means reading a next row in a sequential, it is related to retrieving all data in the table. So it generally for some order, or otherwise some order is or otherwise sequence order is performed in this particular record. And that is pay checks might be printed in alphabetical order, or otherwise any constraint it should be for implemented for that. Next, that is sequential order. Either we need for employee name and department name or postal code, or any constraint is implemented for this particular sequential order. And read arbitrary or random row means, here retrieving any arbitrary row is sometimes called as random accessing. So in this random accessing, so either if suppose any customer could place an order at a random, it could be for retrieve a matching data from that particular customer. If the customer is matching, means the particular record only alone for we need a retrieving a process. And how to storing a data? So here the storing a data is involved in three operations, either the inserting a row, or deleting a row, or modifying a row. So how to insert a row with the help of the insert statement, and how to delete a row with the help of the delete statement, and how to modifying a row with the help of the update statement. And reorganizing the database. So here how to reorganizing the database, or otherwise here to go through the entire rewrite each and every table for cleaning up in the storage space. To run this command, there are two complaints. If you want to clearing up the table operations and reorganizing a table, means two complaints is raised. One is, it can take several hours for this command is to processing a larger database. And second one is, a few system required all the users be logged from the database before the administrator can use for this command. So that is, you cannot reorganizing a data in a, that is you cannot as much possible for clearing up in the table operations and reorganizing a table. So we need a storage space for which method is implemented for the reorganizing a database. And some condition for packing and reorganizing a database, we delete sizable number of records from the database, or upgrading a new file format, or moving a database to new locations. For example, emailing a database or moving it from development to deployment. To avoiding these are the limitations for occurring or reorganizing a database. And identifying problems. In case during the database design stage, we identify the potential problems. So what are the problems occurred for design stage, that is design stage? They are, first one is analyze the database usage and volume of statistics. And another one is, once identify the form, report, query that is causing delays, need to determine the cause the problem. So what problem is occur, either the data retrieval or data storage or data reorganization. So what kind of problem is occurred during this, during the problem is identified. And timing, procedure and loops can terminate or determine which section is longest delay. So if you are using a looping statement for this, if suppose longest delay means it may occur some problem is raised. And once identify the location of the delays, test the various strategies for improving a performance. So based on the performance, you can that is the the second method to improve the performance to alter the way of data is stored. So each and every time the database management system provides the different controls over the data storage. Thank you.